Hi everyone. Just a quick show of hands. I can't really see anyone out there, but anyone take a train journey today to get here? See, that's fantastic because what the railway does, it impacts an awful lot of people's lives, whether it's people in this room, friends and family. And what I'm going to demonstrate today is how Network Rail and the part of the business I work in are trying to use geospatial technology and data strategy to make your lives an awful lot better and make journeys an awful lot better and make the works that we do in the railway more efficient to get the railway back on time. So Network Rail own and manage the infrastructure in Britain, on the railway infrastructure. So that's signals, bridges, overhead line, 20 managed stations. All the infrastructure assets that make those trains possible are on our infrastructure and they operate in that environment. We have a very sizable budget, every control period is a 5-year period, but key to me and key to some of my colleagues in the room as well is how we can use data and information and geospatial technology to save cost and save the taxpayer money and make it a more efficient railway. Our ethos for CP7, which is our current control period, is simpler, greener, better. Simpler is how we use data and technology, including geospatial, to deliver a simpler railway and get our railway operating more effectively. Greener is how we look at biodiversity net gain, ecology, environmental, and how we get more carbon neutral in that environment. And then better is, well, for everyone in this room, anyone who uses the railway, so your journeys are an awful lot better, and how you can be confident in taking a train journey, and it goes there on time, and be confident that when you get to the train station, the train will be there and will operate effectively. I'm going to speak about Wales and Western, part of where I work, but Network Rail as an entity, I have some colleagues in the room, they work very heavily in the geospatial field. So I'm just going to focus on where I am in Wales and Western. Our trains operate Paddington to Penzance. They go past Heathrow, they interact with Heathrow, and up to Oxford. We have 2,700 miles of railway, 90 million journeys per year and growing with some of the more works we're doing. Old Oak Common, as part of High Speed 2, as part of our network as well. So we have 2,600 employees. I think it's actually at 3,000 now at the moment where we are. But this is Wales and Western region, and what I'm going to describe today is how we operate in the geospatial world and data. We have a national entity, Technical Authority, colleagues here. Stephen Brooks is here as well. He's a good friend of mine. He manages geospatial and Network Rail under Chris Stanley, who's our head of asset data. And an awful lot of colleagues here are in this geospatial world, and it's great to see everyone here. I work to the rules and the standards set by the business, but what drives me as well as being driven behind this is what the government wants and the Transport Infrastructure Performance Roadmap to 2030. You'll see elements today about the natural environment, the built environment, modification, construction. We do this all the time, and key from that is that we get the insights from the data, and that helps us to, as a business, as a regional and a route-based business, to make decisions nationally as well, and the DFT. It all feeds into that wider scope of how we're going to transform infrastructure in itself. And data and geospatial is key to that, as you can see. So in order for geospatial enablement to take place, I have an asset data strategy. It's about the foundations, how we manage our data, so data governance and ownership, how we make sure our data is managed with clear accountability. That's who owns the data, and in our route, it's particular engineers and the different disciplines who own the data behind that as well. Data quality came up this morning. You're never going to get good data quality. That was great to hear this morning in another forum. But we try and we strive to get the best out of the information we have and improve the information we have. Being able to easily access our data, that's one of the key messages around geospatial, is that we have different data sources, and even that making them visible in the geospatial environment allows people to see, and different parts of the business to see and interrogate that information as well, and that data. Modern tools, technology, we need to be able to analyse, and I think this morning, even when I was here last year as well, geospatial and the Esri tool sets allow us to analyse our data. Even if it's not geospatial, you can use it to analyse it, which is great as well. And we have tools in the business that allow us to do that. But the main factor is to have the skills and knowledge to use the data, and that's the people process. And so behind everything we're doing is we are bringing our roots on that journey with us. We are bringing the asset engineers, the maintenance engineers, because there's no point in doing this geospatial endeavour and our data quality framework if the people can't understand what we're trying to So why I'm here today, geospatial data enablement. So this is our ambition, to develop modern data and insights and capabilities and tools and technologies to drive innovation and operational efficiency. I think innovation is very powerful because we are trying to be innovative, and we are at the start. Well, Network Rail as an entity has been on the journey for a while, but in Wales and Western Region, we are at the start of that journey on how we can use this technology and the data sets behind it, and innovation is key. So key with my team is how we use innovation and think of different ways to use that information. We have an awful lot of legacy systems, an awful lot, and we'll go through that in a second, modern data management, and the key thing is we get insights from the information, and it does mean that if this is working effectively, it means that our possessions come in on time. It means that we plan our works more effectively, or even we understand where we need new stations or extending platforms and things like that, which makes our whole journey an awful lot easier. This is just an overview of what that strategy translates to. So what we're doing is the asset information model is where we have all our project information, our asset information, our maintenance information, even health and safety files, which is a requirement by the government. We're looking at maintenance schedule tasks, buried services, intelligent asset information. But what we're trying to do and bring into this is the data from what the data and the data sources from what our people use on the ground, whether that's in SharePoint or if it's in OneDrive. It's understanding where that data information is, and they're bringing that in here. We are looking at different with our supply chain and the different tools they give us to manage the railway. So that's where remote sensors come into that as well. But that's our kind of scope and what we're looking at, and the key to that is geospatial information systems as part of it. So this is an example of what anyone who came here on a train today, not drove a train, but came on a train today, can see on the railway. You're flying by 80 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour, 120 miles an hour. This is a 500-metre section of track. This is actually in between, this is Uffington Road Bridge, halfway between Didcot and Swindon in Western Route. On the top part of it is just an overview of the different asset types we have in that 500 metres. And then below, we have the different data sets. There's some typographical surveys, which is a typo, but that's what happens in these presentations when you do this. But there's an awful lot of trial hole data, and there's above ground information data, and there's below ground information. This is the problem set we have, and you can imagine translating this across 2,700 miles, and then by default across the whole of Network Rail, which is 20,000 plus miles of railway. That's the problem statement, and that's what we're trying to capture, to make the information visible in an environment for people to interrogate it. So this is the challenge. On the right-hand side is a view of our GIS platform. The circle in the middle shows you where that asset is located in our legacy system. In Excel, on the left-hand side, that's the asset data that corresponds to that dot on the map. But actually, in actual fact, the assets are the two green dots either side of the railway. It's an overhead line portal. And that's the problem we have. We work on a linear railway where all our assets are measured along the start of the railway all the way down through via ELR on miles. If we want to plan works, if we want to go out on site, if new people come into the business, this isn't feasible anymore because, and as well as that, the business is managed on track diagrams, schematic diagrams. I think for Western Route, there's 260 pages as you can flick through and try and find out what assets are there. But that's what schematic line diagrams. Here's the station, here's the signal, here's the bridge. So that's the challenge with geospatial data. The journey that we have, well, basically from our data strategy, a subset of that is a digital twin strategy. So how we bring GIS and the asset information model and performance data into that environment. We had a business case for geospatial and BIM resource, very successful in that. It took a while to come in, but the read from the business nationally was you need to manage geospatial data and have people to do that. So the business case went in, and we were very successful in hiring a senior geospatial technical specialist and a BIM model manager as well to bring that 2D, 3D world together. We recruited and onboarded resources, and then the hard part started was the region and data familiarization is the hard part behind that. We're very data-centric. It's all linear. How do we translate from a linear environment into a geospatial environment? And how many systems do we have? And I think we've got 90 plus systems or even 100 plus systems. And we are working on it. It is fantastic. But these are the cards we were dealt as part of this geospatial journey. And then we started building proof of concept applications as part of that. So this is nothing fancy to you guys in the room. You're probably doing way more fancy thing in GIS and in the platforms. But for us, this is a big step change in our route and how we manage data and information in a geospatial platform. We call it GeoRAIL, so it's Geospatial Reliable Asset Information Location. It is trademarked, so just keep that in your head. And I said that on purpose for one person in the room. But basically, what we're doing is we're identifying all our assets, so overhead line structures, signal and telegram, and telephones, train-borne signals, magnets, level crossings, location cases, track. We're putting them all on a map. And then we've tabulated information from our source system that identifies where it is. And now we're moving into the geospatial world. So we're moving from all those dots on that map all the way down the middle of the railway. We're geospatially aligning everything on a map, which means everyone in the business can identify and view that information in there, which is key. What's good about this? Well, what's good about this is, and keep walking back, sorry, but what's good about this is it's nice to have it all geospatially, but what innovation are we bringing to the party on this? Well, we're talking to our maintenance teams, and we're asking them what they want to visualize. And even from an energy and carbon perspective, we're talking to a regional data and carbon team, and we're getting a link into all our energy boxes that we have in Western Route and Wales Route. And we're going to have a feed from the energy provider in here, and then we're going to put in cost, and we're going to look at carbon analysis, and we're going to look at how much energy we're using as part of that. And that's just a slight, that's just for the moment, but it is that step change in not only just visualizing the assets and searching the assets and seeing the information, but also getting that added value, and that's the art of the possible. So it's all innovation, it's still a proof of concept, but I think it's going the right way as part of that. Parent-child MSCs and work orders. This isn't on after the watershed 9 o'clock on a Friday night. It's not a documentary. It's how we manage the railway. Basically, we have our asset hierarchy is we have a parent asset. So in the case of electrification, it could be a substation, and then the child assets from that would be overhead line masts, power supply points, anything that feeds from that as well. That's what we've built into GIS is that parent-child relationship. MSTs, maintenance scheduled tasks and work orders. Work has to be organised and arranged. That's the maintenance scheduled task and the work orders. And what we've done as part of this concept is we've actually visualised the information on an enterprise platform, so people can get added value. What's outstanding? What do I have to work on? How can I search for information? Items like that. That's key because that's what our customers want, which is our route. So we did go around, we did capture requirements, and as a bare minimum, we presented this, and they think it's fantastic and a step change and the future, to be honest, on that. So how do we validate data? How do we validate information? So we were looking at suite and how we validate information. I know on Network Rail and Technical Authority and nationally, they do an awful lot of work with suite, which is fantastic, and it is a game changer in working that way. But we're looking at suite, how do our engineers validate where the asset is? It's all good for us and our team to use different data sets like point cloud, aerial imagery, surveys, but we want the engineers to actually stipulate and say our asset is right here, X marks the spot. That's where suite comes into it. With some of the ecology work we're doing, we have field apps. We have a workflow in there as well, how we can pick up bats, how we can pick up some of the ecology work that's happening, and also, so it's a mobile-based and desktop-based validation as well. And we're also using Enterprise, that isn't here, to identify the assets and click X marks the spot on that. But key, data validation is key, otherwise no one's going to trust where those geospatial assets are, and we don't know. The people on the ground know, and that's the main message behind that. This is something that so just a bit of background on this. We started with a blank slate. We went around the business and we asked everyone, have you got any ecology data that we could use? And the business, there wasn't much information there. So we went and we spoke to the ecologists, and we had 4 or 5 workshops. We brought Esri in there as well. We captured all the requirements. But this is an internal Network Rail built application for habitat mapping, species records, survey management, licenses, documentation, and of course there's a regional viewer which captures all the information in there as well. Mobile-based and web platform, I think, this shows the power of what geospatial can do. It's not perfect. There's a few things in there. We're still in a dev environment. We need to move into a full functional enterprise environment. But it just shows what you can do with this technology. And it was hard work. It was hard work. But we had good people working on it, and even some of our data managers in the room, they upskilled in doing creating web apps and creating mobile applications as part of that, so to spread the word. But this is the power for me of why our customers in the route need a tool that's geospatial, and this is what we built. This is kind of phase one. The next phase is we're going to work with Esri on habitat management plans and the reporting aspect, biodiversity net gain. But this just shows what is the art of the possible with this technology, which is fantastic. I'd be remiss of me just to talk about what our digital twin is. So we're also building a 3D virtual railway. We have our GIS platform, which is fantastic, and we have 200 miles of model built so far. This is Paddington Station, so we're using model-based environments, we're using Unreal Engine, and the idea is that it gives everyone that digital replicator railway. So it's 1:1 scale. It's a digital footprint on that. But that's just an example of what we're doing at Paddington and all our stations as well. How it translates and how we envisage being used is, and we are working with our possession planners. All our asset data is in Esri. All our geospatial information is Esri. It is transferable over, so we are working on that with Esri as well, and with some other vendors, and how we can have GIS information available in 3D model. But because it's that digital replica, it means that when we plan works that's going to disrupt your journeys, we can do it more successfully and do it right first time. And we can look in the 3D environment, and we can have our planners and our construction managers and our maintenance engineers, and they can walk the route beforehand. They can place plant machinery that they're going to plan to do the upgrade, and maybe get it right first time, which means your journeys are back in on time and there's no overruns and things like that, which normally happens as part of this. It's about the user experience and and the immersive user experience with that. So, what's the digital twin strategy that I mentioned earlier on? GeoRAIL, remember, is in the center, and that's the core process. We have survey data sets, we have performance data, we have drone data. Actually, we're getting too much data. It's been so successful. We have something like 70 data sets we've been asked to capture and provide in an environment to feed into this. We've rolled back on that, and we're going to look at what the priority is. But we've 3D models, we've project data, we've GIS data. Just an example, last Christmas we had a possession between Paddington and Reading, and then we're going to dig the ground and do some trial holes, ground investigation. But we found a report from like 2 years ago with the same information. It saved £100,000. So we didn't have to get a team out to dig the ground, put in boreholes, get the logs out and investigate that. That means we came back in time on that possession, and that's because our information management and geospatial endeavours are working to that effect. Of course, it's our stakeholders, our maintenance, asset management and projects, and it gives us that visualization of a 3D virtual railway, cloud-based geospatial platform. But more importantly, what we're doing is we're feeding the data and information from asset management and maintenance and projects into that environment on there. So, future roadmap. Working with Technical Authority and our own IT department, we are hopefully getting in an enterprise portal, which means fully functional, moving to development zone. We're going to migrate GeoRAIL, which is all the asset data, all the geospatial data, all that ecology information into that environment, which is fantastic. Just from a point of view of data, the governance and documentation is key to that, so we are documenting what we're doing, and we're going to document everything as we do in the future, because that's the geospatial policy. So, for example, any data set, geospatial data set, we need to have how we use it, what we use it for, what the data is, and that's the governance behind that as well. Specification is the word I'm looking for on that. Engagement and training is key, because we want our people to use these tools. We want them to visualize the railway and move away from that schematic-based view, because it's for the benefit of everyone and everyone in this room that we work more effectively. And then, of course, there's the expansion of the digital twin. So that's it from me. I'm just going to hand over to the Esri subject matter experts to go through in a bit more detail about some of the items we spoke about today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John, for that section of the presentation. It's always great to hear how customers are using the technology. My name's Adam, and I'm joined by my colleague Phoebe, and today we're going to be going through some useful tools in the ArcGIS system for managing kind of data creation and data editing. And ironically, we want to avoid your data model being everything everywhere. The data set we'll be working with today is a fictitious port data model located on the Humber Estuary, which Phoebe's going to talk us through in more detail in a moment. We're going to start with ArcGIS Pro before moving into Suite and Python. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Phoebe.
Great, thanks, Adam. So, as Adam mentioned, I'm here in ArcGIS Pro, and we have this fictional site plan of a port. Just to run you through it, we have some cargo zones on the left-hand side, lorry parking bays on the right, and they sit within a network of roads. I'm going to spend the next couple of minutes taking you through some workflows to help you ensure that your data remains accurate, reliable, and consistent. So the first of these workflows that I will run through today is the use of templates, and templates help you create sets of repeatable features. For example, if I just zoom in on our site plan here, I have a junction with a set of traffic lights, and this is probably a feature that I'm going to want to replicate at other junctions within our site plan. I'm going to make use of templates, and this will help me ensure that any new additions that I add remain consistent. So let's go ahead and add a new junction. To do this, I'm going to make sure I'm in the Edit tab, and before I start making any modifications, I'm going to make sure map topology and snapping are turned on. I'm then going to create a new feature, find my template, which in this case is junction with lights, and then just start to draw the square where I want this junction to appear. The snapping is keeping me aligned to the corners, and I will then double click to tap, and all my symbology and my spacing, positioning has automatically pulled through without me having to make any changes. So let's have a look at the template that is behind this. I'm going to click on Manage Templates, again find my junction with lights and select Properties. Within the builder of this template, I have 3 rules that are denoting my junction markings, my signals, and my positioning and spacing of my traffic lights. So templates are a really great way to ensure that any data remains consistent. The second of these 3 workflows that I will run you through today is using the map topology tools. And when this site plan was created, there was a slight error, and that 4 of our lorry parking bays are slightly shorter than they should be. I want to remedy this, and map topology tools will help me do this. I'm going to head back to the Edit tab, and within the Editing toolbox, I have quick access to feature creation and modification tools, and some of these tools have a map topology aspect to them. Now, for this particular workflow, I'm going to make use of the Reshape tool, and what's really great about this tool, and the reason that I've chosen this tool, is that I can edit multiple features at once. So within the tool itself, I'm going to select edges, and I'm going to highlight now the edges of the features that I want to edit. Hopefully those of you at the back can kind of see that, but that has highlighted it in a bolder pink. Now all I need to do is simply draw out and extend the shape where I want my lorry parking bays to extend to, and a quick tip for this tool is if I right-click on an edge and select parallel, this is going to keep me nice and aligned, prevent me going off at any angles, again just adding in another element of accuracy to this data. As before, I double-click to finish, and now all of my lorry parking bays are a consistent length. So this was a really quick method of introducing consistency into your data. As I mentioned at the beginning, this tool can edit multiple features at once. So not only has my lorry parking bay now changed, but my road network feature itself has also updated with this tool as well. If I want to make some edits with even fewer clicks, I can make use of the Align Edge tool. And you may notice that this 3rd lorry parking bay down has a cutout in it that we want to remove. So by using the Align Edge tool, I can make sure that my existing edge is in solid yellow symbology, and then my new edge that I'm aligning it to is in that hash symbology. With just one click, that cutout has now gone, and all of my parking bays are a consistent length. And what's great about these 2 tools as well is that they are included with your creator license, so you don't need any advanced licensing for this. So these are just 2 of the map topology tools that I've used, but there is a whole kind of toolbox here of editing tools and map topology tools for you to explore. Finally, I want to walk you through domains, and domains are a set of rules that describe the available values for a field. Now, just to put that into some context, for my cargo zones, I've set up 2 domains. The first of these domains is a simple text domain that says whether this cargo zone open or is it closed. However, I also have a more complex domain that has a set of industry standards describing the contents of this cargo. For example, crude oil, ores, or coal. Now, the reason I've chosen to use domains and what makes domains particularly powerful is that I can control the values for this list and prevents people adding in new values, even if that's just through a misspelling. And this is really important because these are industry standards, so I don't want any other additions to this list. This is quite a long list with some particularly wordy entries, so rather than creating this by hand, I'll show you how you can create a domain list using a geoprocessing tool. So I'm going to head over to the Analysis tab and open up Geoprocessing and select my Table to Domain tool. I'm going to fill out the parameters for this tool, so I have a cargoes code CSV, which is just a CSV file that has my codes and its relative descriptions. I'll fill out the rest of the parameters, including the geodatabase in which I'm saving this to. And one thing I just wanted to highlight is this update option parameter at the bottom. It's not particularly useful right now because we're creating a domain list from scratch, but if this domain list had changed or was edited in any way, this last parameter here lets me batch overwrite or append to my existing domain list. So I won't run the tool now because I have created one before, and that will create a domain list. And then if I open up my fields for this cargo zones layer, it is within this kind of back-end field area here that I can assign this domain list to a particular field. So in this domain column, I have assigned my cargo to my stored cargo field and my open-closed domain to my open-closed field. So these are three ways that you can ensure data integrity in ArcGIS Pro. If I just pop back to the slides. And before handing over to Adam, I just want to quickly mention a couple of other capabilities that can help with data editing workflows in ArcGIS Enterprise. Attribute rules can be used to automatically populate attributes as well as checking for attribute validity. They also support a set of geometry checks, including some topology rules, and attribute rules can make use of an arcade script to allow you to make your rules specific to your data and workflows. Enterprise web services allow multiple users to access data through a range of apps, and this editing can be done through the mobile, web, or a desktop. For simple or isolated edits, the last-in model works fine, but sometimes you need to manage more complex editing scenarios where you need to make a complete set of edits before making them available to the rest of the users, and one of the ways to do this is to use versioning. With branch versioning, editors are still working against the feature service, but their edits remain isolated in their branch until they're complete. They can then reconcile their branch to bring in any changes to live, check their edits, and then post them as a single set of updates. So that was a really high-level overview of using ArcGIS Pro and Enterprise. I will now pass to Adam, who will take you through Suite for ArcGIS and Python.
Thanks, Phoebe. So we've seen how topology editing works in Pro, and now we're going to move into Suite. So this is a product specifically developed for the needs of the UK market and supports topology editing and rule checking in the web. So Suite offers functionality for creation and editing, ensuring that data workflows are followed and that no data can make it into the data model if it doesn't conform with that. And one of its main advantages and ways of doing this is through live feedback. So fundamentally, Suite is an app builder, similar to Experience Builder and dashboards that you may have seen in the last session. So you can configure the app that you want your users to have access to, which tools are available to them, which live feedback they're seeing. A majority of this is done through Arcade, the Esri lightweight scripting language. And I'm going to run through a few of the live feedback tools that I've set up to help us manage the port. So the first one you'll see here is this information box on the right. So this is a HTML overlay. I've configured this using Arcade. So we're pulling in a few variables from our layers, and we're doing a few calculations. And fundamentally, we're still using HTML and HTML styling, CSS, all of the stuff that goes along with that. And we can even have this be interactive, so we can have the same sort of drop-downs and the buttons and stuff that we would typically associate with HTML, allowing you to have a really customizable experience there for users. And so if I just demonstrate the way that this live feedback works and select one of these cargo zones, we saw in the attributes that Phoebe set up that we had an open and closed field. If I set this to open, you'll notice that the closed is currently 75, set that to open, that immediately updates to 74, and our total operating capacity reflects that too. And you can go really far with this. You can add as much sort of calculations and things to that HTML overlay that you'd like. But what if you'd like to display that in a slightly different way? We can also add within Suite side panels, such as the ones along the side here. So I'll just deselect what I've got there to make it a little bit simpler to see. And I'd like to be able to display this information in a pie chart instead. So I'm going to open this side panel on the side, and you can see that that's completely possible as well. And this is actually drawing from the same layer and the same data using the same sort of arcade expression. And I'm going to briefly take you through that now. So if I move over into this Suite Builder tab now, I'm presented with the different side panels that I've created. I'll click on the pie and open the panel editor. Go down to the Data tab and edit the script. Don't worry, I'm not going to take you on a kind of 20-minute introduction to Arcade. I'm sure there's plenty of sessions here for that today. But fundamentally, this one is bringing in the feature, grouping by that open and closed field, so the data is basically in two boxes, whether it's open or whether it's closed, and that's what gets returned into the pie chart. And there's plenty of other things that we can do within this. So I've chosen a pie chart, but you can see here there's lots of options for various different charts. You can even have a HTML experience there, and I'm going to go into that in a second. So we also set up, when we were in Pro, the cargo categories, and I'd like to do a bit of work based on that. So there's a lot of different cargo zones here, and I'd like to get a better understanding of what cargo is being stored where, and I'm going to use a table on the side for this. So if I just drag this out a little bit for a second. Again, same sort of arcade expression, but the group by this time is using the cargo category to return a feature layer where everything is grouped by its category. And we can go one step further with tables, and we can add actions in. So what we can do within Suite is there's a specific to Suite arcade expression that basically looks at which row of a table is selected, and then we can act on the data within there. So if I just move so that we can see that the zones are here, and I'm going to go for freight units bigger than 40, click on its action, and I've set it so that Suite will select the parts of my data that match that cargo category. So I'll just close that for a second and deselect data before we go into the last one. So if we move into a scenario now, I'm the port manager or some kind of role like that, and I've been told that a contractor needs to do some work within my port. And they're going to need to close a road. And I want to see, before I kind of start to put any of that into action, what could that affect? So I'm going to select a road here, and I'm going to go into my final tool, which is a Show Affected Roads tool. Just going to, again, move this so that we can see it a little bit better. Zoom out slightly. And so when I click this, what this arcade's expression has just done is it's taken that selected road, it's done a spatial tool on it, where it's basically looked at what boundaries are touching that. And we could go so much further with that. Currently, that is only selecting the ones that directly touch the road. But you could have a knock-on effect. You could look at the ways in which these roads are facing, and work out which knock-on parts of the port are going to be affected by that. But for now, we've kept it simple, and it's just showing the affected roads. And so Suite is able to use live feedback to tell us kind of what changes are going to happen before we've even had to make them. And there's also rules that we can set up on those layers. So you'll see on the Suite stand upstairs, they have plenty of different examples showing, if you try and draw something in one area that it's been configured not to be allowed in, it won't let you do it, and things like that. And so we're able to keep a really clean data model. But what if the data has come in from a different system? Or what if it's come in prior to us implementing all of this? Well, we're going to need a different tool for that. And one such way of doing that is with Python. So I'm going to move now into ArcGIS notebooks. And some of you may have used this, or some of you may have used Python, but not necessarily within notebooks. Basically, ArcGIS notebooks is a Jupyter environment within AGOL or Enterprise. and it allows you to connect in, use your data, and a variety of different Esri and open libraries. So the first thing that this notebook is doing is it's connecting to our online environment. And it's very, very simple to do this. We can just use the GIS home, and it goes straight to the logged in user. We don't have to worry too much about authentication. And the data set that I'm going to be working with now is a cargo bookings layer. So it's going to be people need to store things in those cargo zones, and they've done something like a submission into a survey, and we're looking at the data from that. And what we want to make sure is that this data has a cargo category. We know what data we're expecting, start and end dates, so we know how long it's going to be there for, and also where that's planning on being stored. So the first thing that we're going to want to look at is, are those table fields there? So I can return straight away, yeah, I can see all of those fields are there. That's absolutely fine. And then I want to double check the number of records. You can see here it's returned 1,000 features. Absolutely fine. Doesn't seem to be any errors there. And then I want to make sure that there hasn't been any sort of errors around the cargo categories. Maybe someone's been in Excel and accidentally auto-filled all the way down a column, so everything's showing in the same cargo category. I can see a decent spread. And you'll see I've actually returned this in a pandas table. So I think sometimes people associate ArcGIS notebooks with only outputting to ArcGIS features and things like that. We can still use a variety of the same sort of open libraries that we typically use in our other Python workflows and just bring ArcGIS data into these. The next thing I want to do is check that all have sensible dates populated. No one's put like 3026 instead of 2026. And I can first check that they all have values, so check for any nulls. And then the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the date time to just check that the date ranges make sense and return to the viewer whether anything is staying a particularly long period of time. So in this example, it's longer than 6 months, and there's 4 that are there. So we'd probably want to check those. The next thing I want to do is a little bit more complex, and there's a lot of code there on the screen. I'm not expecting anyone to particularly be able to understand what I've done there. Great if you do, but basically what this is looking at is, are there any clashing bookings? Stuff that's, one cargo is meant to be stored in the same place at the same time as another thing. And it's picked up a few, and it's given us back their unique IDs. And we can go one step further. We can even reassign those clashing bookings using Python. We can look through the layer, see, is there another zone that's available for that? And we can return that again as a pandas table. We could even apply styling and stuff if we wanted to, if our user is going to be just looking at the output of this script. But we might want to go one step further. We might want to say, instead of kind of looking at that data within the script and within the table from something like a scheduled notebook, maybe it'd be easier to have that in a feature layer instead. And so the final thing I've done is I've joined this table as a outputted feature layer to our existing feature layer. So in a map viewer, we can see straight away where those changes have come. We can use labeling to say the original subdivision, the cargo zone, and the new subdivision. And then we can even use a little bit of arcade styling within the pop-up to give us a little bit more information. So we've been able to reconcile an error-ridden data set with our data that we've produced in Suite.
So in this session, we have shown you some different ways of how you can keep your data on track. This includes keeping data consistent in ArcGIS Pro, using HTML in Suite, and validating your data using ArcGIS notebooks. So we're followed by a really exciting closing plenary, but in the meantime, if you do have any questions on anything that we've just shown, please come to the front and we'll be happy to help. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of the conference.